Most teaching about David is wrong about wealth. The slingshot story is preached. The kingdom story is preached. But the 17 years between them, the years that actually built the man who built one of the most prosperous reigns in Israelite history, almost no one teaches. That is where the real wealth lesson lives. And I'm about to break it open for you in the next 6 minutes. If you are sitting in your own wilderness right now, watching for the moment your work starts producing visible fruit, this teaching will change how you carry yourself in the season. Nobody is watching. David spent 17 years between being anointed king and actually becoming king, hiding in caves, running from a king who wanted him dead, building an army out of misfits, debtors, and men in distress, while the throne he had been promised sat occupied by someone else. Stay with me, because what he did during those wilderness years contradicts almost every modern wealth teaching you have ever heard. And the third principle I will reveal at the 4-minute mark is the one that cost him years, but produced a fortune that lasted generations. Most teaching about David focuses on 2 moments: the boy with the slingshot, the king with the kingdom. The 17 years between them get treated like a footnote, but Scripture does not skip those years. Scripture spends nearly half of 1 Samuel describing what David did between being anointed and being crowned, because the wilderness years are where the real building happened. This is the part the modern professional needs to hear. Wealth is not built in the moment of the breakthrough. Wealth is built in the years before the breakthrough, when nobody is watching and nothing visible is happening. David understood this. He did not waste his wilderness. He used it. Look at what Scripture records. He hid in the cave of Adullam, and while he was there, men started gathering to him. 1 Samuel chapter 22 verse 2 tells us who they were. All those who were in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented, gathered to him, and he became commander over them. And there were with him about 400 men. David did not gather a polished team. He did not recruit professionals. He did not build his army from the elite of Israel. He gathered the broken, the bankrupt, the angry, the unwanted, and he led them so well that by the time he became king, those 400 misfits had become an army of 30 mighty warriors, the most respected military unit in the ancient Near East. The men nobody else wanted became the foundation of one of the most prosperous kingdoms in human history. 3 specific principles made it possible. The same 3 any modern professional can apply during their own quiet seasons. The first principle: he built with what was available, not what was ideal. David did not have the resources of a king when he was in the wilderness. He had a cave, a small group of fugitives, and almost no political support. By every visible metric, he had nothing. But he did not waste energy waiting for better conditions. The cave became a command center. The fugitives became an army. The wilderness became a training ground. He did not need ideal circumstances to begin building. He needed his own willingness to start where he was. The modern professional often falls into the opposite trap, waiting for the right capital to start investing, the right partner to start the business, the right market conditions to make the move, the right credentials before they will even consider the opportunity. David did not wait for any of that. He had a cave and a calling. He worked with both. This week, look at what you actually have available, not what you wish you had. A small amount of capital you have been holding because it does not feel like enough. A skill you have been developing but have never charged for. A connection you have been hesitant to ask for help. Something is in your hand right now that you have been ignoring because it does not look like enough. Use it, imperfectly. The cave was not impressive, the army of misfits was not impressive, but it was what David had, and he built with it. That is principle 1. The second principle: he invested in people before he had anything to offer them. This is the principle that separates ordinary builders from generational ones. When the men in distress gathered to David at Adullam, he had nothing to give them. No salary, no security, no promises, no clear future. He was a fugitive himself. He could not offer them safety. He could not offer them payment. He could not even guarantee they would survive. But he gave them something most leaders never give people in difficult seasons. He gave them dignity. He treated them like warriors before they were warriors. He trained them like men of value before they had proven any value. He led them like they were going to win, even when winning looked impossible from the cave they were hiding in. And those men did become warriors, because David had treated them that way before the world had any reason to. This is the principle modern finance content almost never teaches. The people who build the largest fortunes are almost always the people who invested in others before they had anything obvious to offer in return. The mentor who took the meeting before they had a profitable business. The partner who supported a friend before the friend was a name. The investor who backed an unproven idea because they saw something in the person. These investments compound for decades, sometimes for lifetimes. David's wilderness investments became the foundation of his kingdom. The men he led from a cave became the council that ruled with him from a palace. This week, identify one person who is in their own difficult season and invest in them. Not money, time, attention, belief. Treat them like the person they are about to become, rather than the person their current circumstances suggest. The investments you make now, in the wilderness, will be the relationships that define the next chapter of your life. That is principle 2. The third principle. And here is the one I promised you at the start. He refused to take a shortcut, even when the shortcut was offered. There came a moment when David had a chance to end his suffering immediately. King Saul, the man who had been hunting him for years, walked into a cave to relieve himself. The same cave where David and his men were hiding. Saul did not see them. He was unarmed. He was alone. David's men whispered to him, "This is the day. God has delivered your enemy into your hand. Take what is yours." David could have killed Saul. The kingdom would have been his that same day. The wilderness years would have ended. He did not do it. 1 Samuel chapter 24. He cut off a corner of Saul's robe instead. He told his men that he would not lift his hand against the Lord's anointed. He would wait for the Lord's timing rather than take the throne by his own force. This decision cost him years. Saul lived for years after that cave. David spent more years in the wilderness because he refused the shortcut. But here is what almost no one teaches about that decision. The kingdom David eventually inherited was clean. There was no blood on the throne when he sat on it. There was no rebellion against him because he had taken power by force. There was no curse on his rule because he had murdered to gain it. The patience of the wilderness produced a kingdom that lasted because the foundation was clean. This is the principle modern wealth building almost never wants to hear. The shortcut to wealth that requires you to become someone you would not want to be when you arrived. The deal that requires you to compromise. The investment that requires you to break a relationship. These shortcuts always look like deliverance in the moment. But the wealth that comes from a shortcut never lasts the way the wealth from patience does. This week, identify one shortcut you have been considering. Be honest with yourself. Then ask yourself whether the kingdom on the other side of that shortcut would be one you would actually want to live in. That is principle 3. David spent 17 years in the wilderness. He started with nothing. He built with what was available. He invested in people who had nothing to offer him. He refused to take a shortcut even when it was right in front of him. You are David. You are the one who has been promised something that has not yet arrived. You are the one being asked to build with what you have, not what you wish you had. You are the one being asked to invest in others before you have anything obvious to offer. You are the one being asked to wait for the clean version of your kingdom. Build in the wilderness. Invest in the broken. Wait for the clean throne. In the next video on this channel, we open the wealth strategy of a biblical figure who built a fortune from a position most people would have called hopeless. If you have ever felt behind, this teaching will change everything. Subscribe. Stay close. Throne of Wealth.